City of Stevens Point Personnel Committee meeting, recorded January 8, 2024.
Alder Shore.
Here.
Alder Broderick.
Here.
Lang.
Alder Lang.
Here.
There we go.
Alder Plassance.
Here.
And Alder Burr is excused.
Thank you.
Before we begin, Chair Shore, we do have an out-of-state travel. I was just informed today about that from the police department for free training. It's supposed to be scheduled for February, and if it's okay with you, the committee, so we don't do a special committee,
Right.
we would get PFC to review this request.
I mean, my only question would be about public notice of meeting agenda.
I'm sorry, if I may.
Yeah,
the Police and Fire Commission meeting will be noticed. It came in too late to make the personnel agenda. Our policy technically says it has to have approval from the Personnel Committee. We're asking to defer that authority to the Police and Fire Commission. It'll be a publicly noticed, proper meeting, but PFC rather than personnel.
It falls under their purview.
Yes, certainly
really.
does.
And it typically goes through here,
Out-of-state travel in August, typically.
right? Oh, for the year, right. And so the item would be to
No item.
to the,
No, this is
is
just,
a
if there is
request.
an objection, we need to know. Otherwise, it will go to PFC.
thank you. Are there any objections? Hearing none, thank you. Thank you for explaining. Item 2, then, is a request to approve 2024 base wage agreement between the City of Stevens Point and Teamsters General Union Local 662 with the Street/Parks Departments. And who are we going to hear from on that? Director Lemke, please.
Oh, this is for, this is streets and parks.
Right.
And
Hold that thought, Director Lemke, for item 3. Director Kramer.
I don't have much to add. Essentially, what this is the base wage agreement for our two crews. I don't know if Director Badoon's here, but every year we go through, once the pay plan gets set and the budget's adopted, and we meet with the Teamsters representative as well as the union representatives from both of our departments. This is just reflecting the base wages and the current wages for the people in the positions.
Director Badoon, if you have anything to add, you should probably come in here.
A quick question. Does this match what we have for budget?
Yeah, yep, this is what's been approved in the pay plan and what the positions are for both of our departments.
Thank you.
And this follows the pay wage study and things and the pay plan every year and the budget, because whatever the cost of living adjustment it gets included, gets reflected in here as well. If I missed anything, go ahead.
No, he didn't miss anything. I was just talking to Logan in the other room. So nothing else to add. Follows the wage study, approved in the budget.
And includes pay for special certifications of skills associated.
It does not. So
Okay.
ours does not.
Please.
It was part of the utilities contract, which is the next item on the agenda. However, certification pay is something that all of the directors have been made aware of. You will very likely be considering some sort of policy adaptation in the near future.
Thank you for that explanation. Got it.
Yeah, and I guess I would just echo, we certainly have been asked about it in our departments. Is that fair?
All right. I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Moved by Plassance, seconded by Alder Broderick. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee, including Alder Lang?
None.
Hearing none. Any questions, comments from others here tonight? Please.
Steve McKay, 1808 Clark Street. I am the Parks
Union Stored, and I strongly encourage you to go forward with the certification pay that the water department currently gets. There are a number of certifications that we are available. A lot of people don't have them, and I think this would encourage them to get educated and get certified.
Thank you for that. That's in anticipation of some future month soon when we will be getting a proposal on that. Thanks. Hearing no other comments or questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. That passes unanimously. And Director Lemke is still here to help us with item number 3, which is approval of the 2024 base wage agreement between the City of Stevens Point and Teamsters General Union Local 682 for the Utilities Department, including the utility certifications and standby pay as alluded to before. Director Lemke?
Yeah, so the order of the actions earlier today at the Utility Commission was to approve the certifications and then the contract, just so the certifications existed somewhere before the contract was approved without those in it. So essentially going way back to pre-Act 10 times, and it's been carried forward since, the utility operators, chief operators, and folks like that have several state-issued certifications that are available to them. And, you know, one of the things we're going to talk about here is what ones are required and what ones are not. We're required to have them for our operation. Not every employee is required to have them for the operation from a state perspective, but we haven't required them to be completed within a certain amount of hire in the past, and we certainly encourage them. So that list has been in the contract for several years now, but acknowledging that since they aren't bargainable, they shouldn't exist there, we're just turning them into a schedule. So what you see before you doesn't have any changes on it other than we've put some tweaks to job titles, you know, so what might have been a operator before might be a utility operator now and stuff like that. So there's no substantive change to it. It's the same schedule that currently exists, just put into a schedule of its own instead of in the bargaining agreement.
Thank you for that. Could you explain for us the difference between the hourly pay for certifications as opposed to the daily standby pay?
The standby pay is for those people who are required to be available for callback to work for emergency situations and things like that. So we have 3 different areas of the department. One is water production and treatment, the other is wastewater treatment, and the third is the general distribution and collection system, so everything out and about in the city. Those 3 areas all have somebody on call 24/7. So you take that on call, it's on a schedule, it's cyclical. And it's $40 a day. So that means you're available, you got the phone on you, you can come in and you can respond. It doesn't mean you have to resolve everything because some things take 3 or 4 people to resolve. It means you're accountable to respond, assess the situation, get help where you need it, or call your supervisor.
So that's not on top of?
The certification pays apply to your hourly rate based on training you've gotten, tests you've taken, and their recurring education. So you need to provide a certain amount of development hours over a 3-year period to the state to prove that you're continuing your education in that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion on the schedule. Moved by Alder Broderick.
I'll second.
Seconded by Alder Plaisance, who beat Alder Lang by a hair. Any other questions from the committee? Questions or comments from others? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I heard 4 ayes, so that is unanimous. And item 4 or 5? Thank you. Item 4 is a request to start the city engineer position at step 5. Director Badoon, could you start us off with that?
Yes, thank you. Within the memo, as I identified, this has really been one historically challenging position to fill. Even before the previous engineer that we always had, we had challenges otherwise filling at that time. So it's truly a unique position. It's one of few that actually requires state licensure. The pool of candidates out there is relatively small. Not only we're seeing it on the public sector, but the private sector as well. I still know a lot of people back in my old haunts and stuff. There aren't enough engineers to go around. So I'm asking to be more competitive with the private sector because that's where we're going to pull from. And we do have a candidate, and I've purposely left it out there at the individuals requested of this, but I think it's necessary that everybody understands it. The person who was willing to throw their hat into the ring here is our former city engineer, Greg Shannon. So not only in addition is he essentially the candidate others looking for. In fact, the job description was written based upon what Greg was in the position. He started in what the original position when we basically wrote it says, what did Greg do while he was here? What did he, and that's what the position is. So to think we necessarily would find someone who would so perfectly fit that would be otherly hard. So he's thrown his hat in the ring. No one else has. I think in this market, had anyone had any interest just to work with the city of Stevens Point in his position, they would have at least thrown their hat in to see what they could get. No one has done that. So I think because we have such a unique candidate here that is truly qualified in so many different ways technically. Also, I'm a big fan of Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage, which is a book about organizational health and the importance of culture within there. And I can't hardly envision someone that really fits the culture that we're creating, we really want, other than Greg would. So well, it seems like there may be a jump up from where we always are, having completed the study. Even Sarah from Baker Tilly had identified that even within the study doesn't necessarily cover every possible position. There may be some challenges out there, and I do think this clearly is one of them. I know I'd identified this already back in September as part of the study, the challenges I thought it would have even at its grading here to bring in a candidate. So I think otherwise well known from that. So asking that we be able to negotiate with our candidate and offer them step 5.
Thank you for that explanation. Based on the memo from the mayor, there are 2 issues. One, it's fairly clear relating to the comparison to other public sector peer organizations. But if you would speak to the other one, the other question being timing and whether to take a little time to advertise at the higher pay and see if that changes the response.
The biggest issue that I have otherwise with waiting, it sounds like a great idea, is that we have a candidate. I don't know how long that candidate wants to otherwise wait around. My fear would be that they may withdraw from that if it seems that we're wanting to open up, doesn't think that they're potentially qualified or whatnot to do it. Like I said, I think it was open otherwise for a month. I think people had an opportunity to do it. And I just feel very comfortable, I think other staff as well, with the candidate we have, someone who's willing to throw their hat in the ring to do that. I would hate to propose that we may potentially lose that individual.
Thank you very, very much for that as well. I would entertain a motion. Let's get it onto the floor first.
We allowed him to speak before it was on the floor?
Oh, I think it's important. Sure.
I think it's important that we were able to clarify the 2 memos that were included in the packet, because I don't disagree with hiring a well-qualified candidate at a higher step. As a matter of fact, that is part of our policy. If a candidate has exceptional qualifications, we have in the past hired at a higher step. In this case, we didn't have a candidate. This candidate only applied after the request was made to hire at step 5. The position's been vacant for over a year and a half already, as outlined in Director Badoon's memo. I would say it's not critical that we jump to do something. The position was posted at step one. That's what the public saw. Step one is now $91,645, as it says in our memo. That is based on the analysis that we just spent less than 6 months ago, spending tens of thousands of dollars to have a professional company evaluate every position in the city and tell us what the market value of that position was. Came in at grade N, step one is $91,000. We had HR manager Frosch call the existing cities that have engineers. This is not an uncommon position. And you can see from the memo, Wisconsin Rapids currently pays $91,300. That person's been there a while. And $84,000 in Wausau, $88,000 in Marshfield, and $83,000 in Manitowoc. These are our comparables that were used in that pay study that, again, we spent tens of thousands of dollars to evaluate. It shows that the Springstead pay plan is in line. Not only is it in line, we are the highest out of all of those. When we did the pay plan, the council decided that we didn't want to be average. We wanted to be above average. So the pay plan included a bump above market rate. So we were able to be as competitive as we can in whatever position that was, whether it's streets or parks or community development. Everybody has their own unique thing. Okay? Then on top of that, January 1st, the council authorized the largest cost of living adjustment in the history of the city, over 6%, in addition to what we already were paying with the new pay plan. So there was an additional 6+% put onto each and every position in the city. Now what we're asking is that we take one candidate who, by the way, doesn't mention anything about qualifications. It just says we can't get applicants. And taking that one applicant and giving them over 12% more without giving every other potential applicant the opportunity to look at it. Now my guess is, and I could be way wrong on this, but it was posted at step one, $91,000. Well, if I've been working for the city of Wisconsin Rapids for X amount of years, a couple $100 doesn't change my status. I'm not going to pick up my family and move. But if now I'm going to be making $102,000, yeah, I think we might apply. And the same would hold true for any of those other current city engineers in our comparables. When you're talking a jump of over 12% on top of what we had already paid for with the Springstead plan, I think you're going to get some more applicants. And they may be qualified equally or better than the person who just applied that used to be a city employee. So I think we owe it to the community to at least post it for a little while to see if anybody's interested. Again, the position's been vacant for over a year and a half. If it's not hired tomorrow, shouldn't make that much of a difference. And that is why the HR manager Frosch and I put the memo together, and I don't know if the HR manager has anything to add, but please take that into consideration because we may be doing a disservice to every other employee under the Springstead plan if we are going to, within 6 months, I mean, heck, we're a week into January, and we're already wanting to make changes to that pay plan.
Manager Frosch, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just, just to mirror off of what the mayor said is, I understand that applicants apply, but not knowing that what we would have as potential applicants, there may be more that would be looking at a step 5, and I was just looking at, an equal opportunity for all applicants that apply for the position that would be able to look at a step 5 versus, they looked at a step 1, they passed it by, but would they consider step 5? And that's all I'm looking for is reposting it.
Thanks. So we have 2 questions. I suppose we could combine them, but maybe let's deal with them one after another. The first question is whether to grant the request for the position to be at that level, and then there's additionally the question of whether to re-advertise at that level. if that makes sense. So I would entertain a motion on the first, which is the request to start at this level.
Make a motion to start the position.
Moved by Broderick,
Second it.
seconded by Lang. So again, we're going to start with that question of changing the level, understanding both that this is kind of veers off from the plan, but also understanding that we've had difficulty filling it, at the prescribed level. Questions or comments, please, Alder Plaisance.
I thought I was going to be the bad guy here tonight. I appreciate the comments that I have heard right before this. I'm not in favor of this at all at this level. I think you're walking on thin ice with, was mentioned that anybody else who goes into the qualifications as far as going through the interview process in here, all of a sudden they're going to find out, oh, if I hold out, maybe they'll bump me up 10 grand. There's a lot of other employees that have worked here a long time, heads of departments and not heads, but just in general, that this is kind of a slap in the face to them, in my opinion. I could maybe understand the fact of going to step 2, but since we are already over everybody else, it seems almost to me like there's, in a way, a little favoritism that, let's give this guy who we know the opportunity here. What if we went to step 2? Out of those 400 hits, would we get any hits that were qualified people that we felt good with? At this point, I'm a no on this.
Alder Broderick?
Yes, I would just like to comment that my impression is that the nature of this position is that it does have some pretty stringent requirements and requires state licensing, which is not true of many other city roles. I would furthermore question to the committee why we would turn down the opportunity if we are already comfortable with proceeding with step 5, which is under discussion. Granted that. Why we would turn down a candidate with perfect qualities and relevant experience specifically to our city on the remote possibility of poaching an employee from another position. That seems like an unnecessary delay if we're prepared to offer that compensation anyway.
Thank you, Alder Broderick. I'll go ahead and offer a view, including the connection between the two issues. Yes, the logic of comparing to peer communities is important and a key structure for the pay plan, but it's not the ultimate key thing as we face our human resource challenges. The key thing is what we get from the labor market. And if there's enough, as the director mentioned, if there's enough competition with the private sector, then that affects, how relevant the peer communities are. And so I think that the lack of applications is sending us a very strong signal from the labor market, which is why I think we need to do this. I do take the point about testing whether the 10,000 might make a difference in that response. So I'm inclined to be supportive of both. Alder Lang, did you want to add anything before we?
Sure, yeah. Much along the same lines of what you just said there, Alder Short. It seems like we've struggled for some time to get this position filled. I'd like to see what a step up in incentive the market responds with. So even though I don't want to see us delay, since we've been trying to fill this for a while, I feel it's only fair to see what's out there if we're going to step this pay up in that position.
Any questions or comments from others, please? Alder Fischler.
So we haven't had an engineer for a while. How do we get projects done? Do we go through some other company, or how does that work, and how much does it cost?
Thanks.
Because I'm not sure exactly how that
Would you
works.
speak to the contracting element for?
Yes, what we're doing right now is relying very heavily on consultants to complete the work that otherwise we would do internally for us, while having just one engineer isn't necessarily going to completely separate us from all future needs. Just the quantity of work, as well as sometimes the specialty needs that are always going to require us to use someone there. This current year, we have kind of three big projects going on right now. Strand is a little over 300,000. Clark Dietz is about 143, I believe it was. And then Grammar, we've got doing the Forest Hill subdivision at 135, I believe. With an engineer, plus or minus, just looking at those particulars for active projects now, either the large Reconstruct Strand project or the other two, I think would easily be accomplished there, along with some of the other work that comes up throughout there. So would without hesitation say we could replace, this engineer would replace about $300,000 plus or minus, most likely plus, of work, because they averaging out roughly about $200 an hour. Again, plus or minus depending on who works on it, but that's a really good estimate these days for engineering services for what we pay contractually. And I think even with benefits, if I understand, of course, we're talking about a $69, $70 an hour total payout, including benefits, even at this step 5. So it really benefits us in totality to do the work in-house.
So the cost, if I understand you correctly, the cost of not having someone in the position, you estimate to be 2 to 3 times the salary of the
Correct. Yes. Given, like I said, because the...
But of course, it's salary plus benefits, so it's probably closer to 2.
Right, because, yeah, so I understand, maybe just a nod, 17% plus 25,000 is, so that, yeah, roughly 102, so you're talking about $145,000 in total annual for $300,000+ in contracted work, so 2.
Other comments, President Christensen?
I know it's important to have a process in place that looks at things orderly, but I also am aware that situations come up that require sometimes unique solutions. I'm thinking that this is probably one of those. I know as a former school superintendent, I always had the authority for certain positions to go outside the salary schedule in order to be able to fill some significantly more difficult positions to fill. I think this is a unique situation where we do have someone who has already demonstrated the capabilities, not to perform just at a adequate level, but at a very high level, has exactly the skills that we're looking for, has familiarity with the city to be effective day one. I think any delay in this is just going to require us to spend, when you compare the extra $10,000 that we're increasing the salary, when you compare that to the $300 and some thousand of contracts that we're putting out there, it seems to me that we're worrying about pennies and spending dollars. Yeah, and I don't want to minimize $10,000. That's a significant chunk of change. This is one of those situations where when you're competing with the private sector, that's probably what it's going to take. In all honesty, that $10,000, he's probably still giving us a hometown discount. In the private sector, he's still going to be able to make significantly more. My concern is if we prolong this and he pulls out, we're now right back to square one, spending significantly more dollars and employing and sending it to people that don't have the same amount of familiarity of the city's needs that this individual would have. So I, for one, am in favor of the step 5 and getting this person on board.
Alder Morrow.
Alder Morrow, District 11. I think that we should see who else is out there, really. Alder Prasad, I think, has a real good. I think his thoughts are right. See who we could get someone who saw it at 91,000, now at 102. Hey, I'll throw my hat in. I know in the past we have poached other folks from us, and folks have been poached from us as well. So I think we should at least try.
Alder Shuda from District 8. Yeah, I'm just afraid of the precedent. I think Dave mentioned that earlier, and what's going to happen. I think just for a little bit anyway, I don't know if there's any mandates statewide as far as posting with the new number. I think just for optics, we have to at least post it out there for a time being and see what happens.
Not even another comment, but just a question. Now, this is a shared position between utilities and Public Works, correct?
Correct.
How does the funding of that position go? And so the increase of 11,000, is that all coming out of taxpayer dollars, or is some of it coming from utility dollars? How does that all work?
Yeah, so the position only existed for, it was only filled for a short time while we were in the 50-50 environment, but we split that, utilities 50-50 with Public Works. One thing that I wanted to add, and I may have the timeline wrong here, but I actually had the draft of this memo, I think, in my inbox over the weekend. So I think something that the weekend before that it was due, and I'm not too sure when the application took place, but I think there's a matter of hours between when this would have been a request for an individual, which is what you guys see routinely. When we've had requests for step 5, oh, and the other thing is step 3 can be done with an internal committee, so we wouldn't ask for step 2 here. This is to go up to step 5. We'd go up to step 3 with an internal committee that consists of the chair, the mayor. Yeah. So just to clarify that. So, I mean, with a matter of hours difference, with the application in hand, the memo written would have been a little more specific to an individual, and we wouldn't be debating this. I can say, having worked with the individual, I'd fully support that individual getting hired at a step, given what we have right now. Is the timeline the most critical thing? No, but I think that it's going to be a really high bar to cross to get a more qualified person in there that we are certain is qualified because we have experience, right? So that part I'm comfortable with, and yeah, shared position.
Thanks, Alder Kiemer.
Alder Kiemer, District 3. Yeah, I guess I just have a couple comments and a question, and I guess I'll start with a question. When the job is posted for the public, is there anything in the job description that says pay is based on experience or anything to that effect?
No, it's pretty much posted for what
it is.
Step is.
Okay. And I guess, I mean, I see the precedent and I see sort of the dilemma, but I do also think this request is not changing the range of pay. It's simply requesting that she or he start at a different spot. And I mean, given that you may put an entry-level person who's just been certified who hasn't really worked much in the public sector at step 1, it seems reasonable that you would take someone with many years of experience and start them at step 5. I've worked as a city, county, and village employee, and all of those processes were different, but they had pay grades and step plans. And I guess I just always felt that during the interview process, you can always ask for more money. I mean, you may not get it, but I mean, that's just, you know, whether you're a public employee or private employee, that those step increases in many places I've worked were negotiable. Your grade would not change, you were assigned to a certain spot, but where you started was based on how you came in and what experience you had before. So I am in support of the pay grade change. Thanks.
Alder Kniebone.
Mary Kniebone, District 7, Alder. If I was an engineer in Rapids making $91,000 and I had been there several years, I don't think I'd uproot my family and my life to move to Stevens Point for $875 more a month, because $10,504 divided by 12 months is $875. So we're not talking about a lot of money here, really, to entice somebody to uproot their life for this extra money. An experience is worth a lot. This is a specialized position. You've already spent a lot of staff time looking at applications, vetting applications, deciding that none of them were qualified. You've got a candidate that you can walk in and start from day one for $875 more a month. You couldn't train somebody for that. I think it's a no-brainer, again, in my mind. Bring this person on, and we'll save the city money in the long run. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. There weren't any other applicants. No applicants were turned down yet. Just because we didn't have any. We had 400 hits, but no applicants.
Thank you for the clarification. Director Konofsky.
Thank you. I can only speak from the community development aspect, but this is a position that my department works with quite a bit. Obviously, when we talk about new road planning, anytime we talk about subdivision development, we look at developments from everything from infill to redevelopment. It is a position that we work with quite a bit, and it has hurt us over the last year and a half not to have somebody in that position. I want to talk a little bit about the word precedent, which has been thrown around tonight a little bit. The big issue that I have is that, if I hire a planner and I have 25 applicants for a planning position, and my number one choice says, well, I need to go to step 5, I have other folks that I can lean on if I don't feel as though they're qualified for step 5. In this instance, we didn't. We have one applicant who's highly qualified, has experience with the city of Stevens Point, who's, asking for a step 5, which I think is totally justified. As Director Badoon had mentioned, the Forest Creek subdivision, to contract out the engineering for that is about $135,000. A lot of that work could have been done in-house. So, there's real return on investment by having this position in-house. I don't think it's precedent setting. I think you've got a really highly qualified applicant. You didn't have a huge pool of applicants, and I do think it's really important that you folks know that there is, at least internally within my department and working with the engineering department, it's a struggle when you don't have somebody that you can just walk downstairs and have a conversation with. You have to pick up the phone. You're getting billed for that, as opposed to picking up the phone, calling downstairs, or walking downstairs to have that conversation. It's really important. So I think we're doing a bit of a disservice to our community by reposting the position when you have a qualified applicant who's currently really interested in the position. And quite frankly, there's always the opportunity that qualified applicant walks away. Yes, is there an opportunity for somebody else from another neighboring community to move into that role or apply for that position? Absolutely, but we don't know what else could be out there. And it should be noted, and I might be a little off on this, but the engineering position is one of the few that has private sector comparables, right? And so when we look at the pay study that was done, I don't know if we necessarily completely looked at the private sector because the data isn't as readily available as the public sector, but it's very hard to find a private sector comparable to a community development director or a city planner. We have those comparisons as opposed to an engineer, which has public and private components. So the community development department, myself, I'm very supportive of Director Badoon and Director Lemke's request and would recommend that you folks move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got another quick question. In hearing this $300,000 that is potentially be sent, is that already on the budget for this year?
The numbers are generally inclusive of our project budgets. So yes, they are slightly elevated this year. To get there, it would just be savings we'd otherwise have off of those projects. None of the contracts are out, though. We're working into that at the moment, however.
Okay.
So if I understood, just for further clarification, you were citing examples of projects that have been contracted out, work that's been contracted out
that is being worked on right now, yes.
All right, let's take a vote on this question and then move to the question of advertising. So all those in favor...
Can you clarify the question?
I'm sorry, to reminder, thank you, Alder Plaisance. What we're voting on first is whether to set the level of the position at step 5, to increase it, bump it up from step 1 to step 5. And what will still be open for discussion after we vote on this will be the question of advertising, re-advertising. Okay?
Thank you.
All those in favor of moving the position to step 5 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
The vote is 3-1, so the motion carries. And if I could engage the director on the next question. So we understand this is a potential problem of risk and the risk of losing the candidacy of the qualified applicant. And I don't think any of us wants to, be crazy stupid about that risk and take months to leave someone, hanging.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly could a re-advertising, advertisement deadline, could that be done expeditiously in, short weeks, not months, to, not push the risk?
I think I know what your others, and the initial postings we've been putting out are 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I did see that it is reposted now. I wasn't aware of that.
That's what you. That's how you set a deadline after posting would be 2 weeks, and then
correct.
And then you'd know. Do you want to argue against that?
I'm concerned but if the committee so chooses to think that that's the fair way to do it, the more important part of it is the step 5. I think regardless of what candidate we're going to get, we're going to have to move it up. We've seen out of the over 400, and I don't know if there have been any more, since I wrote the memo, we're not getting any movement here except for the one individual. I'm very concerned about otherwise losing that. However, if they move their posting no more than 2 weeks, I think that's the fair thing. It's what we would otherwise post at a normal job.
I've been uncomfortable with the part of the discussion that's focused on a particular individual at a particular level in another peer community. That just doesn't feel right. And Alder Kneebone spoke to it. That's not what I have in mind. What I have in mind is more that if our argument for taking this step has to do with the supply in the labor market, then it does seem right to check whether that is still true, that, weak response, whether that's still true at a higher level. I realize it's not a much greater level, but, people have different price points, and maybe, they would apply. Personally, I think that might be worth testing, although I did want to, kind of hear how strongly you would argue that point. Others on the committee? Questions, comments on this, now on the re-advertising question. Please, Alder Plaisance.
Is it required for an engineer to live in the city?
No, it's
so someone could from Rapids just go down the Highway Drive for $800 and some more dollars a month.
They
not affect anything at home.
Correct. Okay. They wish to.
I have a comment.
Please, Alder Broderick.
Just a hypothetical. If I were a qualified candidate for a position and someone had if I had reached out to them and received interest and there was mutual communication and interest there in moving forward, if they then told me that they wanted me to wait a few weeks while they ruled out the possibility of finding someone else, that would absolutely put a damper on our potential relationship moving forward, and I would ask that the committee be aware of that.
Thank you for that point. Mr. Mayor? Okay, Alder Plaisance again, and then Mayor.
With 400 hits, there was some interest in this. And who knows, out of those 400, if we're going to bump it up 10 grand, might decide that they want to do this. We're going okay with one person who is qualified. Out of those 400, we could get 15 that are qualified. We never know. In the fairness, this job wasn't offered to this person. This person's basically stating this is what the wage is that I will do it for. We need to see if there's even a better qualified person to do it at that wage and open it up for a while to the public.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Just to respond to Alderperson Broderick's concern, there's a personal relationship there with Mr. Shannon. He's aware of what the process has been, and he was waiting a year and a half already to come back. But to your point about not wanting to move from a different community, Director Kramer came from a different community. Director Karnosky came from a different community. Clerk Yenter came from a different community. DJ, our superintendent, drives every day from Merrill. So yes, there are people willing to, for a certain amount of money, move or commute.
What I was responding to was there was an awful lot of discussion about the engineer in Rapids.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was more directed at the comparables, just to prove that the pay study was right where it was
our
supposed to be.
discussion in the room went pretty deep into that scenario.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. I don't think that's, really. So anyway, other questions and comments?
Yeah, I got a quick one. Now, legally, do we open ourselves up at all with the fact that we posted it at one and now we're going to hire somebody else at another one without anybody else who was reviewing that job having the opportunity to have an interview or to try for it? Or an application?
As a question of sort of employment law and rules, you mean?
Yeah.
Is there anything with?
Potential employment.
I guess we could ask Attorney Beveridge, but I don't know where I started at a higher step.
I don't know if the city attorney's here to answer that.
Right.
We can find out
That
before Monday.
seems like it would.
He was here.
Was he? Maybe he is. Logan, if you're back there, there's a
I started at a
legal
higher step
question.
than was advertised. We hired a superintendent at a higher step than it was advertised. So that part in itself is not a
I think
precedent
that
by any
probably
stretch.
does get classified in, what gets
Right.
discussed and,
It's
go ahead.
put out there as a
But the
wage
city
and then
attorney
it's
is here for that.
negotiated.
Heard the question? Answer is no.
Thank you.
President Christensen.
I think there's two basic questions that the committee has to answer. Is it more likely to get somebody that's qualified? Just being qualified, is that sufficient? Or do you want someone who's qualified and experienced and proven successful in this specific position? There's only one individual that you could state that about.
Possibly. You don't know who qualifies from the other ones.
I know that he's the only one that's familiar with Stevens Point, has experience, and is a proven product.
Or Alex
That's the one thing
What if the one from Wausau, who may have been there longer,
has
comes
not
and
proven
just as
any
much
success in Stevens Point.
And just as much knowledge?
Right.
Then it's not this.
And we have no way of knowing.
This sounds like an exchange.
No, I'm just saying, we have no way of knowing. We can get references and everything else, but there's only one person that exists that has demonstrated within this city, with our firsthand knowledge and observation, that has performed to that level of performance.
So I have a question, kind of just clarify here.
Alder Lang?
Are we trying to decide if we can hire somebody at a higher pay grade and that's it? Like, I don't why do we have to put it back out there, I guess is the question. What is the requirement to put it back out there? If we've gone through candidates that just don't appear, 400 clicks, I guess, 40 clicks, something like that, I forget the number, but like one candidate's the only one that's like, hey, I'll apply, but I have to start at a grade 5, and that's what I'll start. Is that what we have for a situation? Am I understanding that correctly?
The position was advertised at the lower level, was read by several hundred potential applicants, none of whom applied. And what we're deciding now, we are making a decision. We've just clarified that we're not bound either to re-advertise or to not re-advertise. Does that help you?
That helps.
Okay.
So we don't have to re-advertise. And we're not setting a precedent, but we've hired people at a higher grade than advertised in the past, is what I just heard.
Right. The question about re-advertising has to do, as we've been discussing, with whether that would change the response of potential applicants and whether there would be more applications. And of course, we do not have an odd number of full committee members, and so there's the possibility of a tie. I'm reading from some.
Thank you for the clarification there. Yeah, I was not sure about how, like, if we had ever done it in the past kind of thing, and it sounded like we had hired some people in the past at a higher than advertised pay grade, and that was
right. We're not prevented from. It is an option, right? We're not running afoul of anything. If there are no other comments, I'm going to call the vote. Alder Kneebone?
Mary Kneebone, District 7 Alder. Any of those 400 hits could have initiated a negotiation for a higher salary, correct? A higher step, a higher whatever. So there, 400 people decided, I don't even want to bother negotiating. And old wives' tales, adages are usually around for a reason, and one comes to mind: a bird in hand is worth two in the bush, especially when they're a qualified engineer that knows the city culture. Thank you.
If this body has made the decision that we're going to pay this engineer this amount after the study, after following policies and procedures, or however we look at this, if the body has agreed that we are going to pay this amount and we've already have the candidate at that point, I don't know if there really is a need to repost it at that point. I think the bigger question was prior to this with the vote that has already been decided on. But again, just my 2 cents.
Okay. Did I call? We went straight into discussion, didn't we? Without my calling for a motion. So I violated the way we've handled Robert's rules regarding motions. So I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we do not repost.
Seconded.
We have a second from Alder Broderick. All those in favor say aye.
Could you repeat the question again?
Thank you. Question is whether to re-advertise at the higher level. The motion on the floor is to not re-advertise. The motion in the second from Alders Broderick and Lang
Is to not re-advertise.
is to not re-advertise.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alder Lang?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay from Alder Plaisance. Obviously, I was persuaded in the discussion, and the motion carries. And so it does not need to be re-advertised. Our agenda, if not our committee members, is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 7:07.
Video recordings of these meetings are available on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.